Am I in focus over here? What? No? How about over here? Still no? No? Okay. What about now? Am I good? No? No? Still no? Okay, good. Now I'm in focus. This is the problem I've been dealing with for the last few years. As you know, I've been shooting with the GH5. As much as I love this camera, it's got one fatal flaw that's always bugged the hell out of me and caused me to buy yet another camera. That fatal flaw is its autofocus. That little example was a bit of an exaggeration because I left my lens in manual focus. As you know, I've been shooting with this camera for the last little while, the Panasonic GH5. And it does so many things that are so impressive. It was groundbreaking at the time. It's been out for a while. It's probably been out for 2 years now. Still an amazing camera. Still shoots 4K at 60p, which very few cameras do. Doesn't overheat, has amazing battery life. So many things are awesome about this camera that this would have been the perfect camera had it had one more feature. And that was autofocus that actually worked. That's right. The autofocus on the Panasonic GH4, which I'm filming on, and the GH5 that I'm holding in my hand, absolutely sucks. It hunts, it pecks, you're in focus, and for some reason it's like a young child with ADD. It's looking at you, you're in focus, all of a sudden, hey, what's that? It focuses on something behind you. Oh, what? Comes back to you? And then there's something over there. Then back to you. It was so frustrating that I couldn't even do one of these talking head pieces in autofocus because either I'd go in and out of focus or the background back here would pulsate in and out of focus. Well, it would pulsate. I'd sort of stay in focus, but you could tell it was hunting. It's deciding, am I going to stay on you or am I going to look at that thing in the background? So frustrating. So, as you know, to get some nice smooth shots, I also use gimbals, such as this Crane 2 that I've had for a while. And you just can't use autofocus. You can't trust it on the GH4 or the GH5. So I just put it in manual focus. The problem with that is when you're filming, you have to decide, am I filming things that are far away? In which case, I'm gonna set my focus to distance things. But then, hey, if something comes up and it's cool to look at and you turn your gimbal, your camera towards that thing and you realize that's close, that's not gonna be in focus. So then you'd have to stop recording, change your focus, rack focus, make sure everything's still balanced, and then shoot the thing close. And then when you go to pan away, the things far away are out of focus. If you have one of these cameras, you know the pain. That's why I went out and splurged and got Sony A7 III. Now, it's actually not that expensive a camera. It sells for, still to this day, from the beginning when it first came out almost a year ago, I think a year ago, $1,999, let's just say $2,000 US. And it's still today $2,000 US. It hasn't gone down in price. I was hoping it would. But one thing Sonys have is amazing autofocus. Now, what got me thinking I really need to improve my autofocus now, even though this camera is a year old, and realistically, if I waited another maybe 6 months, Sony's probably gonna come out with a newer, better camera, and then I'm gonna cry a little bit deep down inside. Yeah. But anyways, I have that 10,000 nautical mile sailing voyage coming up from South Africa to the United States. And I want to make sure I'm making the most epic cinematic footage I can. And that means I'm going to bring a gimbal. I'm not sure which gimbal yet. And I'm going to do as much cinematic footage as I can, not only on the boat, but when we go to shore at the various islands we're going to hit. It's going to be about an 8-week voyage. We're going to be stopping in Namibia, St. Helena, Ascension Island, then hitting the southern tip of the Caribbean and going up through the Caribbean islands and eventually hitting the United States. It's going to be epic, and I wanted to have the absolute best stuff that I could to make that cinematic footage. And that means I needed to buy a camera that I could throw on my gimbal and have confidence that when I turn and pan and look at things either in the distance or close by, the autofocus will snap into focus and I won't get back to my editing software later and find out all the footage is trash, which happened to me many times with the GH5. So this is what I splurged on. And like I said, the body is actually not that expensive for the features it has. What kills you is the lenses. Sony's lenses are quite expensive, especially if you want fast glass. This, I bought the 16 to 35 f4. It's not obviously the f2.8, which is same focal length, but a 2.8 is much more expensive. I think it's almost twice as expensive. Anyways, I went with the F4 because I'm going to be shooting outdoors a lot in sunny conditions. And if anything, I'm going to have to put ND filters on this to bring down the brightness. So certainly I don't need an F, 1.8 or 1.4 or one of those super fast lenses. On my GH5, I used to use a Metabones. Well, the Metabones is actually on my GH4 right now, but it looks similar to this non-Metabones one. And what it does is it brings in more light. And the lenses I was using, since I couldn't trust the autofocus, I was using manual lenses. Well, they probably had the ability for autofocus, but since these are Sigma lenses that actually were Nikon mounts, the autofocus doesn't work anyway. But that's fine. I didn't trust the autofocus, so I always manually focused. That's great when you're hand holding. No problem at all. I like to manual focus, make sure everything that I want in focus is in focus. The Metabones even adds more light. So the lenses I was getting was 2.8. This is a Sigma 17 to 50, 2.8, and I have a Tokina 11 to 17 on the camera right now, and it's also a 2.8 through the entire focal range. That's pretty decently fast glass, and more than I needed for the outdoor shooting that I do. But Sony not only has amazing autofocus, it has amazing low light capabilities, way better than the Panasonics. So when I am at night on the boat and I want to get some cinematic footage of the moon or the stars or whatever I want to do, this camera will do a lot better. So that's why I purchased it. If you want a rundown of every feature, this camera's been out for a year. There are plenty of YouTube channels that will give you every spec. The main two features that I bought it for was the amazing autofocus and its low light capabilities. Those are the two features I cared about. In other ways, it actually falls behind the GH5, which is a 2-ish or more year old camera. This shoots in 4K in 30p max, and when it does shoot in 30p, it crops in. You can shoot in 4K 24 frames per second, which is what I plan to do, and it doesn't crop in, but at 30 it crops in. They got rid of the overheating problem that previous Sonys have, so that's a godsend. It doesn't presently have a ability to do the time-lapse photography in body. Now there's going to be an upgrade in April before I go, thank God. They're supposedly coming out with that feature, so that's great. But let's just compare it to the GH5. GH5 shoots in 4K 60 frames a second, so you can do slow-mo in 4K. I don't believe there's any crop. It's already a micro four thirds sensor, so it already crops on most lenses anyway. But it doesn't crop, I don't believe, the 4K at any frame rate. It shoots 1080p at some crazy high number, like 240 frames a second. This only shoots 1080p at 120 frames a second. You're already starting to see an issue. This has like world-class in-body image stabilization. You almost don't need a gimbal to shoot handheld with this camera, as long as you're fairly careful and not jerk it around too much. This camera has in-body stabilization as well, but because it's a full-frame sensor, it doesn't have as much room for that sensor to move around inside the body to compensate for your arm movements and stuff. This one's a micro four thirds sensor, so it's probably half the size of the sensor that this one has. So it's got a lot more room to move around inside this body. Therefore, world-class, probably top of all the manufacturers in terms of in-body stabilization. So there you go. So if you're still thinking of getting a camera and you want to do photography or handheld where you're going to manually focus, I still think the GH5 is an amazing camera. It's got good color science. You almost don't need to color grade anything because right out of the camera in the natural format, it looks great. Obviously, you can set it into all sorts of S-Log, V-Log, Cine this and Cine that, and change the profiles to super flat to get more dynamic range. And then you can color grade it if you want, but you don't need to because it's got a great color science. Sony's not known quite as, not as well thought of in their color science, let's just say. So a lot of people shoot in a flat picture profile and then they color grade it later. It's a little extra step, a little extra work, but the dynamic range on this full frame sensor is better than the GH5. So if you are going to color grade, this is probably the better camera for you. So there you go. So you're probably thinking, Craig, that is a heck of a lot of stuff you bought. And you are right. I have 4 drones, 3 gimbals, now 4 cameras. I'm about to start implementing this. Right now you're hearing me on a shotgun microphone. I'm going to go into wireless lavalier mics. I just got this. I haven't even used it yet. And to tell you the truth, I don't even know how much I've spent over the last few years on kit for this channel. Wait. Come on, Craig. You know how much approximately you've spent. Remember the time you made a spreadsheet and you started adding new lines of things you bought, got further and further into it and realized you're going to start crying if you keep adding on more numbers?
so you have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I've spent more than I'd like to admit on camera gear, and you might ask why. YouTube doesn't pay that good, believe me. Yeah, it's just a hobby of mine that I really, really love, and I'm kind of a perfectionist, and when something like crazy bad autofocus kind of throws off a lot of my shots, it kills me a little bit inside because I want to put out the very best product I can for you guys. And so therefore, yeah, I keep opening up the pocketbook and buying more stuff. I've already bought this extra lens over the kit lens, and I'm actually thinking of getting the 85mm 1.8 because it's supposed to be super buttery smooth bokeh, you know, that whole, you know, jazz that everybody talks about. And it's actually one of their cheaper lenses from Sony because most of their lenses are crazy expensive, but the 85 1.8 is actually reasonable. In Canada, I saw it on Amazon for like 794 bucks, and that's, believe it or not, that's reasonable. So yeah, I have a problem. I really do. I have a spending problem. I really need counseling. Help me. But I got to appreciate, I do have some patrons, and they take down some of that cost because they do put a little money into every video I create. So instead of my kit costing me this much of my disposable income, it only costs me this much of my disposable income. So there you go. Thank you, patrons, for supporting the channel. I really, really, really appreciate it. Hopefully you look forward to some new cinematic footage, and I'm gonna cut out right now, go outside and shoot with this new camera, and I'm gonna give you the footage right now. So hopefully you enjoy. Okay, let's get going with the filming here. It's getting late in the day. As you can see, sun is setting. It's a winter wonderland out there. I'll show you that in a second. I've got you on my crane too. Unfortunately, I balanced it all and then realized I didn't bother to put my shotgun mic on. So you're gonna have to listen to me through the built-in microphone of the camera. Hopefully it sounds okay. That'll be test number one. And of course, after saying that the autofocus, oh, crane went way by there. After saying that the autofocus is crappy as hell on the GH5, let's go outside where there's a little more light and see how well it tracks my face. Let me just say before we go out there that I had the ISO set to auto because I knew I'd be going from somewhat darkness up on the inside of my house to the outside, but it's very late in the day, so I didn't think I needed to put an ND filter on, but clearly the ISO couldn't get low enough to actually not make this footage completely overexposed. I tried to bring down the brightness, but yeah, it's just unsavable. It's a learning lesson. Bring an ND filter if you're gonna film in snow. Yeah. So there you go. I'm on total follow focus with the crane, so anything I do up or down or whatever, it will follow me. And yeah, hopefully my face is good. I'll turn you around. It'll probably be blown out because it's snow, winter. It's like March and it still looks like winter here. I will not miss winter when we one day live on a sailboat in the Caribbean or some other warm tropical place. So yeah, welcome to my world. This is what I have to put up with. Snowbanks up to my chest, even in March. Hopefully the autofocus is good. Probably way, way, way better than the GH5. And yeah, maybe what I'll do is I'll pull out my car. I mentioned in a previous episode, I just got myself a new car to me that I love dearly. It's a 2014 BMW 328 diesel. Diesel for fuel mileage because we plan to do tons and tons of road trips in the near future. So yeah, it's always nice to save a few bucks on the old gas mileage. And I'll bring that out, and maybe that'll be the cinematic portion of this episode, and then we'll cut you guys loose. Okay, Not the most cinematic day. As you can see, the sun is going down, it's getting pretty dark. And I didn't really have a grand plan of what I wanted to do cinematic, so yeah, you got to check out my car. And that was, of course, shot in 120 frames a second, 1080p. What I'm filming right now is 4K 24 frames a second. I always use the 180-degree rule, so I always shoot twice my frame rate. And the only way to make it so it doesn't get too bright or too dark is the auto ISO. Just for now, if I was not vlogging myself at the same time, I would probably do the ISO manually, but there you go. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and hopefully you're looking forward to improved autofocus, more cinematics, and whatnot. It's like ice is about to come off my roof. So anyways, until next time, this is Craig signing off, wishing you safe cruising and go out and make some memories. Talk to you later.
Weigh anchor and hoist the sail.